us as we look at images of Cardinal Giovanni Battista Re performing the homily. We're joined by Father Joy Philip Kakanatu, a professor of biblical studies, joining us from Bangalore. Father Joy, thank you for taking the time to speak with us during this significant moment for the Roman Catholic Church. What can you tell us about the process that we are currently seeing, the comments that Cardinal Giovanni Battista Re is currently making?
Actually, I had a couple of occasions to have a meeting with Pope Francis. My impression about him actually was very well reflected in the homily of Johann Battista Re. Actually, Pope Francis was a man who was for the people, connecting to everybody, not only to Catholics, not only to the believers, but he was having a very inclusive vision of the idea of faith, very inclusive idea of actually the idea of the joy of the gospel. That was his key theme and his key message. He wanted to dispel the joy of the gospel preached by Jesus Christ in a very broad, inclusive manner, without excluding anybody. So that was my first take on Pope Francis and his legacy and his message.
Yes, Father Joy, what is the significance of this process and this ceremony that has been underway now for around 40 minutes, slightly more than 40 minutes? What's the significance, not just in St. Peter's Square, but also for the Roman Catholic Church?
The significance of this ceremony is very special. Anybody who watched the burial ceremony of the previous popes immediately notices the difference. Pope Francis was a very simple man, wanted to keep his simplicity in a very symbolic way by opting for a very normal coffin, and that is to be placed as far as possible on the ground. So he wanted to have rootedness and connected to the earth, in a way also indirectly giving to the church a message. Actually, the church to be relevant in the 21st century, we need to avoid all type of pomp, but come down to the grassroots levels to keep humility as far as possible and be humble in relating to people. That is actually the message I get from this very special, unique burial of Pope Francis. And also, after this Holy Mass, there will be a long procession through the Roman roads, going through Colosseum, connecting to the ancient history of Rome, and that would lead to the burial place of Santa Maria Maggiore. That has also enormous significance. Maybe carrying the sacks, carrying the coffin through the roads of Rome, that again communicates actually the need to be coming down to the people, with the people, actually to be there. And it is said a group of poor people will be receiving the coffin at the Santa Maria Maggiore as a symbol of his message to the poor. Being poor does not mean you don't have any dignity.
Yes, absolutely, Father Joy. Thank you very much for that insight. Of course, if you are just joining us, to provide you with an update of what is taking place, Cardinal Giovanni Battista Re is currently delivering the homily during this ceremony, which is taking place in the Vatican at St. Peter's Square as part of Pope Francis's funeral ceremony. To give you an update on what happened a few minutes ago, we started this discussion, this speech, this sermon from Cardinal Re, but beforehand The Pope's body was moved after lying in state for the past 3 days. The coffin was moved outside from St. Peter's Basilica to where it sits now in St. Peter's Square. This funeral mass will be held outdoors with the heads of state in place as well. Of course, Cardinal Giovanni Battista has also paid homage to Pope Francis's pastoral leadership in this speech and this sermon. He says it was maintained through his resolute personality. Battista also said that the Pope established direct contact with individuals and peoples eager to be close to everyone, with a marked attention to those in difficulty, giving himself without measure, especially to the marginalised. The Cardinal also has said that he was a Pope among the people, with an open heart towards everyone. He was also a Pope attentive to the signs of the times and what the Holy Spirit was awakening in the Church. This message, of course, coming from Cardinal Giovanni Battista Re, who you can see on screen now, continuing his sermon. I'll touch briefly on what I was explaining before we got that update. World leaders, around 50 heads of state, 50 world leaders with around 10 heads of state present at St. Peter's Square currently. Cardinals and bishops from all over the world are also present, and tens of thousands of members of the public. You can see there a very simple, plain wooden coffin at the request of Pope Francis. Joining us as we continue to see these visuals is Father Thomas Blessing, the Secretary of Clergy Commission at the Delhi